Welcome to the Brave Enough Show. I'm so excited to have you on. I did a little intro and just was reading all about your bio, and I think it's so fun to interview someone who has taken such big, bold, brave moves. And sometimes when we see people like you on social media who have really transitioned your career and are doing such different things like real estate and investing and all these other things, it's intimidating to the average physician. They go, oh my gosh, like, how did that person get there? And I can't get there. That seems so far off. And yet, I know you are a real person. You probably have real struggles and all the stuff that the rest of us have going on with kids and craziness. And so I'm just excited to hear from you. And I would love to hear you just kind of open up and tell us a little bit about how this whole thing kind of started and how you even had a thought about transitioning.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to get to talk to you today, and I know this is going to be a lot of fun. Um, I have to say, I didn't have a plan for my life to turn out this way in terms of work. I was actually very happy being a physician and wasn't looking to leave medicine, really wasn't even looking to cut back in medicine. I had this plan when I was becoming a hospitalist and going through a hospitalist fellowship that I was actually going to move abroad and do medicine because that's what my father did. Actually, was a family medicine doc, and I grew up in Papua New Guinea and I grew up in the Pacific Islands. So I knew that medicine in the US was going to happen a certain way, but that there were alternatives. And so that was actually my plan, was even going through med school. That's why I wanted family medicine. So I'd be able to do everything so that I could go live abroad. But what happened was I got married to a guy who was really entrepreneurial, so entrepreneurial doctor. And when I got together with him, he was already doing a startup. So my husband, Kenji. And so I got involved in that startup and helping to build training for physicians. It was all about documentation. So that was like kind of my first taste into entrepreneurship. So again, not planned, but just kind of got involved in that. And then what happened was when we were getting married, he asked me a question about how I wanted my life to look without limitations. And that was the first time anyone had ever said without limitations, because I kind of started talking about, oh, we're looking for a house, we're going to get a house, we'll have kids. And it was like, no, as if there were no limitations, as if money wasn't an issue. Like, what would you really want to spend your time doing? And that's when I was like, well, I would really like to spend like 3-4 months a year in Italy. I would like to have a Spanish villa. I would like to produce olive oil. I'd like to host people. Like, I want to be a really good hostess. That's what I want to learn to do. And it was so different from being more than a full-time hospitalist, because at that point I was a full-time hospitalist and I was picking up OB shifts in family medicine because I didn't want to lose those skills. And we didn't know how to get there, but I had this vision now, and it was kind of became a shared vision. And that's what kind of led to everything. So it started with a vision of how I wanted to spend, a significant amount of my time doing this other thing that wasn't medicine.
I love that. And I love this, how this origin story really, part of it is probably how you grew up, seeing the world differently, like, and seeing options, what your dad did as a physician and practicing medicine abroad. And so that kind of you probably brought that like to the table that many of us in the US don't even have like a clue of what that would look like. But I really love that someone who cared so much about you asked you just a really good question and you had the courage to answer it. Because sometimes I think we sit in audiences or we listen to podcasts or we even listen to our coach and we get asked a question and it's like so terrifying that we don't want to even answer it because we're scared if we answer it, then we'll have to do something about it, or we'll have to admit that we're actually not living the life that we so desire to live.
Or we don't even know it.
Mm.
I don't think if he had asked me if I had really like even sat back and thought about that. I always assumed there were limitations. I always assumed you had to go with what was realistic. And you're absolutely right. For me, I had this whole extension of what was realistic to do as a doctor because I watched my dad do it and I watched my mom. My mom went along. And so I had this other vision. But even then, I think that I hadn't just sat down and really thought about it extensively. And I think that most of us don't. We just are jumping through hoops and we get kind of used to that. And we never sit back and say, what do I actually want now? Because it can change over time.
Mhm. Absolutely. And don't you think that that giving ourselves permission to have it change is such a powerful part of our journey and living authentically? Because so much of medicine, at least in the United States, is like, you're going to do this, you're going to go to residency, and then you're going to go to fellowship maybe, and then you're going to get a job, and you're either going to go into academics or you're going to go into private practice, and then you're going to achieve this, and then you're going to try to make partner, or you're going to become an assistant or associate or professor, and you're going to do all these things. And at some point, most of us have a thought. We may not answer it, but we have a thought or a question, or we feel like, oh, is this really what I thought it was going to be? Or, I like doing that for 5 years, but now I'm bored or I feel stuck, but I don't know what else is out there for me because there's no, there's never been any options. And so you said something earlier that was really powerful. You said, without limitations, and you also use this shared vision. So it sounds like you and your husband have this kind of shared vision together of living life without limitations. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of sharing that?
So it's interesting. This is something I've struggled with a fair amount here and there. Is that in some ways our shared vision is often my vision, and I've wondered, is that okay? Is it a vision that should be created with the two of us, and like we independently come up with it and we meld it or whatever. But I think it's okay for in a couple for someone to be a little bit more visionary and have a real strong view of what they want in their life, and for the other person to be like, yeah, that sounds really fun. I'm all for it. So oftentimes what happens in my relationship is I'll come up with a plan, and he'll be like, yeah, that sounds great. Or if he says no, I don't want to do that, then it's clear, like when we have disagreements like that where one person doesn't want to do it, like the other person has veto power, like we don't move forward with it. But if the other person gets on board, then we go and do it and we execute. So for example, we live in Puerto Rico right now, and we came out here in 2021, in like October of 2021, to visit Sunny Smith, who I'm sure you know.
Yes.
And she was living here, and she was living in San Juan. We visited her and we stayed for like a week, 2 weeks. We were digital nomads at that time. So when my daughter turned 4 months old, we packed everything into storage and we said, hey, we're going to go be digital nomads for a while. And so we ended up here in October, and we saw Sunny, and I was like, oh man, I would never, like, I don't want to live in San Juan. I would never want to live in Puerto Rico. And then I went to bed one night and I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to move here. And the reason is first of all, I love taxes, i.e. I like looking for ways to save on taxes. Like I really love taxes. And I realized when we were in the US, we zeroed out our taxes using real estate for 7 years. We paid zero in taxes into real estate, but it meant we had to keep buying real estate every single year. And I had this vision for this Italian villa. And I was like, you know what? If I take money out and don't reinvest it in real estate in the US, I'm going to pay taxes in order to buy my Italian villa. And I was like, if I move to Puerto Rico and I pay, it's somewhere between 2 to 4% tax total here. I was like,
Wow.
then I could actually get a much cooler Italian villa for the same amount of money. So I was like, okay, we got to move here. And I woke him up in the middle of the night. I was like, we got to move to Puerto Rico. This is why. And he was like, okay. So then went and did all the paperwork, and we moved here, like officially moved here in December of that year. We came here the last week in December, spent a week here, made sure we were here on January 1st. Then we went to Costa Rica for a month, but we got an apartment and everything. We just moved our whole family here. And then people say like, well, that's a huge decision. Like you moved there, like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, we stay here until it no longer works for us. Like we don't
Mhm.
have to be stuck. So you talk about changing your vision. You give yourself that freedom to say, if something's not working, I can change it. It's not forever. Like nothing has to be forever. And I think as physicians, like you were just describing, you jump through all these hoops. We assume this trajectory is forever, and it really doesn't have to be that way.
Oh, no, no. And I think that, that's something that I have learned being an entrepreneur that I never learned in medicine. And I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family. I just learned these skills kind of on my own, and I never say I learned them on my own. I learned them by watching other women, because that's the truth. Other women have taught me a lot about being an entrepreneur, and men too, that I follow and have, asked questions and mentored me along the way. So I really truly believe though that like I had that, I definitely bought into the, like, I can't get off this path, you know? And it wasn't until I had to lay in bed at night and I asked myself, what are you going to regret? Like, if you don't try this thing, if you don't try to become an entrepreneur and start a business, are you going to regret it? And the answer was 100% yes. You're going to lay there at your deathbed and you're going to regret you didn't do this.
Mm.
And what we don't realize is that successful entrepreneurs, or people, successful people in general, whether you're in medicine, whether you're in tech, they have a million startup, oh, pivot, that's not working. That's what makes you successful, is your ability to go, I'm going to do this thing until it doesn't make sense anymore for me. Or maybe it's so successful, I sell it, or it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit with my identity. And I'm going to just stop doing that. And I'm going to do this other thing. We don't ever get that message. And we don't really see that in medicine so much. We see it somewhat in research in medicine, but we don't see it as an individual. We see it as like an institution. And so I think it's such an important lesson, and I'm constantly telling it my coaching clients that, like, why do you think you have to stay the dean for the next 5 years if you absolutely hate it? like you could have loved it. It's not like you made a mistake becoming the dean. You may have loved it for 5 years, but it doesn't detach or detract from now you don't want to do it anymore. So give yourself permission to just make that change. And that's definitely something that I am thankful I've learned as an entrepreneur, but I did not learn that in traditional medicine. Why do you think that? Because obviously you and your husband do a ton of teaching and coaching and are experts in financial security and financial freedom. What tell my listeners, and many of my listeners are physicians, many are not, but why do we need additional income, whether we're physicians or not, outside of our primary employment?
Oh, that's such a good question. There are a million different reasons. I mean, I think you could choose the certainty and the safety reasons first, and then I'll talk a little bit more about freedom reasons. So, certainty and safety. I mean, when you have only one source of income, you are at risk because if something happens and you no longer have that source of income coming in, you're going to have a change in lifestyle. Now, a lot of us as physicians have disability insurance, so that's going to help us a little bit. And hopefully, everybody listening to this has disability insurance. But it's still going to really change your life and potentially have you make decisions that you don't want to make. Or just another example, what if your spouse gets sick, right? And you want to be able to take some time off with them, but you're working. When you're working, you're trading time for money. If you don't have another source of income that's a passive income stream that's not reliant on you trading your time for money, and now you've lost choices. You've lost choices to spend your time with people. So, for example, in my life, my mom last August got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Mm.
And my husband and I and my kids, and luckily I homeschool my kids, so we can explain. I can talk about that too. But we went to Hawaii and we stayed there like at least 4 months last year. Like we just rented houses and we were able to be there. And then my mom went and got her Whipple in April here in California, and we went and we stayed 2.5 weeks, and we had an Airbnb, and we stayed with my dad, and we drove him there every day, and like so those are the types of things that freedom allows, to be able to spend time with those you really love and to be able to navigate through those changes in your life. From the freedom side, it's huge to be able to have geographic freedom, to be able to have extra money, to be able to donate it or give it to causes you care about, or share it with your family, share it with your friends. There's just, I think having multiple income streams sets you up to get through hard times, but allows you to have more abundant times too, at least financially. A lot of this is also mindset. Like you can be wealth is not going to change who you are. It's only a tool. So if you're unhappy with less wealth, more wealth isn't going to make you happier. It's just not. You're going to
Mm.
still be you.
Mhm.
But it will at least give you more choices. And so I think it's a combination of working on your mindset, which is, I think, number one. And then, of course, that's going to actually lead to your growth of wealth and the ability to do multiple income streams and produce multiple income streams. And then you have choices that you wouldn't have had before.
Oh, I love this. And I love that everything you say, it resonates with me. And one of the reasons that I think you kind of alluded to this in the safety, is that it was a wake up call for me. Was, I had this, I'm a cardiac anesthesiologist. I make a very good living, but I had this epiphany when I was first starting my business that all of my salary, and my, not just my salary, but my ability to increase my salary, is 100% dependent on the opinion of one person,
Mm.
one person above me. And I could be the most amazing cardiac anesthesiologist in the world, but as a woman, if I have a boss who has gender bias, or has, who I rub the wrong way, or who I may come across as a little too whatever, fill in the blank, my financial security is out the door, like in an instant. And the reason that, that I realized this is when I started coaching women who were experiencing this firsthand,
Mm-hmm.
that they had towed the party line, and then something happens where they're like, oh, this doesn't sit right with me, or I went for this position, or they got power in, a power differential changed, and all of a sudden they weren't the favorite, and they're very, they are the breadwinners, they're supplying for their family. It is gone in an instant. And I thought, I am not going to go through the rest of my life being dependent, my financial security being dependent on the opinion of one person, because it truly is. I mean, you can, take it up a million levels to the board of whatever, but that is costly. Let's be honest. Like, if you want to argue your pay, or you want to argue a promotion, or you want to argue maybe, being told that you need to resign, that's extremely costly, not to mention all the mental toll that it takes on you. So I made that decision. I think I was 40 when I made that decision. I thought, for my 40th birthday, I am going to never put my entire paycheck in the hands of the opinion of one human being. Never again. And that's when I really realized, like, I need to start a business and monetize. I need to figure out how to monetize things. I didn't know how to do that, which is a whole other podcast we could talk about. But it's true. I think, especially for women, I don't think women realize until something happens how quickly that can change.
Yes. And then you're in a toxic job and you are either facing, yeah, I have to completely move, or I can't speak up, right? And I can't say
Correct.
anything. And yeah, that has a cost on you emotionally, a significant one, and a cost on your energy. And I wrote a book called Life on Your Terms, and that's really what this is about, is having the ability to walk away if you have a toxic work environment, or the ability to take some time off if you need it for whatever reason, for your family, for yourself. It's being able to work on your terms. And so in the beginning of this podcast, you were asking me about, how I left medicine. It was actually not anything I ever intended. I didn't intend to leave medicine. I just wanted the freedom to work on my terms. And what that looked like over time changed. Initially, I was working full time. I actually came out of a divorce when I was 30. And so for me, it was really important to have the ability to make money for myself and not to lose that ability. So my husband actually, he was the one who cut back in medicine and then eventually became a moonlighter, so we could get that tax status that allowed us to zero out our income and buy real estate for those 7 years. And I was like, no, I'm working full time. This is really important for me to have this ability to work. And then eventually I started working half time. And then eventually I got to the point, it was, COVID. I was pregnant in COVID before the vaccines came out. I was a hospitalist, handling the ICU patients. And then I had 6 employees in my business. And then we also had a real estate business too. So we had Semi-Retired MD, had 6 employees. I'm the CEO of Semi-Retired MD. My husband was overseeing the real estate portfolio. And I was like, what am I doing? I've got 2 little kids. I'm pregnant. It's COVID. I've been financially free for years now based on my real estate portfolio. I got 6 employees contacting me through the day while I'm trying to be a hospitalist. This is crazy. I need to decide which is more important to me, which gives me more fulfillment. And I want to cut back on the other one. And ultimately it was medicine, and going to the hospital and being a hospitalist gave me less fulfillment than what I was doing with the business. And so that's how I
Mhm.
made the decision. So again, that flexibility to allow things to change over time. You don't have to say, hey, today I'm going to go start a business and I'm going to quit my job. Like
Right.
allow yourself that freedom to say, hey, I'm going to start this business or I'm going to invest. I think there's two pieces, right? There's the cash flow quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. And on one side is you're an employee or you're a solo business owner. Both places you're trading time for money. On the other side is you're either, a business owner with leverage with a team, or you're an investor. And it's not to say one side is bad or one side's right. It's actually you could have a foot in all sides if you want to. I still have a foot in like being an employee in a way because I'm an employee of my business too, right? So
Yeah.
I produce content. I'm part of the content team in my business. So it's not to say one side is right or wrong, but I do think that getting on the investor side or the, you know, own a business side where you have leverage with employees is really, really important to create another source of income and to take that cap off that you have right now and the amount of money you can earn.
Yeah. Yes, I love all that. And I also think it's really interesting because there's a lot of, I mean, I'm sure you coach on this and you are an expert in helping, specifically most of the people listening to me are women today who have very interesting mindsets about money. like, and I don't know. I grew up in a family where I grew up with all girls. There was five of us, and I had never had brothers, which I actually think was really positive because my dad kind of treated me like a boy, like the oldest boy. And there's some science to that. Like if you grow up in a house where you don't have brothers, that you tend to be a little more independent and you tend to be pushed a little more because the focus isn't so traditionally on the boys. So I always had this drive that I was going to I never ever one time, and it's really actually hard for me, Letizia. Like I struggle when I'm coaching someone who's like, well, I just never wanted to work. I just always wanted to get married and have my husband support me. Cause I'm like, I have never had that thought in my whole brain. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying I cannot identify with that because I did not grow up with that thought ever.
Mm.
Um, and yet, even myself, I still have struggles like, oh, am I worth this? Should I ask for this amount? Should I really say what my speaking fees are? Or should I say, oh, I'll do it for half of that? Like, where I don't see my husband having those struggles at all. He's like very like, oh, this is the cost. They're going to pay us this or we're not doing it. Right. Like and I'm like, well, I don't know. And I coach a lot of women who have these struggles, who they think like they're scared to ask for a raise. They're scared to stop doing unpaid work. They're scared to even ask for what they're worth. Right. And they have really interesting mindset around money. And also spending money on themselves. Like if I say, come to this conference, it's going to help you be a better you. They're like, well, I don't know if I should spend $2,000. But if I say, come to the conference because you're going to be a better doctor and a better mom, okay. I'm like, what about you? What about just doing it for you? They don't want to spend money on themselves. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, do you see in the people that you coach, are there gender differences in how we approach that?
Um, well, yes, I think there are gender differences in what you're describing in asking what you are worth or asking for more. Definitely. And I was just writing, so I started a new business this year called Biara, and it's all about female entrepreneurship. And what I was writing this week was I was writing the newsletter exactly on this. I was writing it on, I'm in a seven-figure mastermind, the seven-figure women business owner mastermind with Amy Porterfield this year. And one of the people was saying, well, I feel guilty taking money out of the business. I feel like, my employees see how much money I'm making and I don't want to take the money out. I feel like I have to put it back in the business. Like there was a whole discussion about this because it's a really normal thing, even for seven-figure business owners, feeling guilty that they're taking any money out of their business for themselves. So that's just to normalize this, that even like people who are entrepreneurs who have built significant businesses still struggle with this. And I think it's culturally, and just as women, I think a lot of us are taught to take care of community and put ourselves last. And men maybe are a little bit more frequently told, put yourself first, what's
Yeah.
most important is you. So I think it's very much cultural. and very normal. And I feel very strongly that there's a reason that so many of us accept less than we really deserve, and it's time things shift. It's time the culture shifts and we start to step into asking for what we want. And I'm training my kids this actually right away. I'm training them right now because they'll come to me and they'll be whining about something, and I'll say, "Wait, don't whine about it being unfair. Don't talk about blaming somebody. Ask for what you really want here." And so I'm
Yeah,
training them to ask for what they want because we weren't taught that. We weren't taught to ask for what we actually want.
right.
And just to give you another example, which is slightly different, but also I think important, in real estate, we negotiate. And there's a number of times we negotiate in real estate. We negotiate upfront, when we're putting in an offer in a property. We negotiate after we do the inspection. We go and we negotiate for a haircut, is what we call it in our community, because we'll find things wrong in the inspection or we'll have justifications that we need more off. And then if it doesn't appraise, we negotiate again. So we negotiate multiple times. And for me, I was lucky enough, like you, to be raised a little bit differently. And when in Papua New Guinea, there's a language called Pidgin English, and there's a saying, "Trium test all," which means try it. That's all. What's the worst that's going to happen, right? And that
Yeah,
trium test all is like such a guiding force for me because I'm just like, I'm just going to ask for what I want. And the
yeah,
worst that's going to happen, somebody's going to say no. So trium test all is like always in the back of my mind, so much so
love that.
that some of the people in my mastermind for semi-retired MD, they created sweatshirts and they put on their wrists. They put it Trium Tessal, the Pidgin English sentence, so that if they're not sure what to do, they'll just look and they're like, "Oh, I'll just Trium Tessal. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen?" And it's a lightness, it's a fun to it, right? It doesn't have to be so serious, but fundamentally, it comes down to ask for what you want, and
Yes.
know what you want, ask for it. And the worst thing that's going to happen is somebody's going to say no. And then you now have information. Now you can decide what you want to do with that. You can choose
Yes.
to say, "Hey, this isn't working for me," walk away, or choose to say, "Okay, I'm going to make this work, but I'm going to be looking for a backup plan," or whatever it is. But it gives you a lot more information and it doesn't have to be heavy and serious. It can be fun.
I love that. And I love that really have given us such good pearls today about giving yourself permission to think about what life would look like without limitations, and giving yourself permission for your vision to change. And that's totally okay. It doesn't mean that you chose the wrong vision for the first
Yes.
5 years, decade, of your life. That because I hear that a lot. I hear people say, I should not have, does this mean I should not have gone into medicine? Should I have chosen something else now that I want to do this other thing? And I always say, no, it doesn't mean that at all. It's a journey, and you have no idea where you're going to be in 10 years if you're open to it. So you've given us permission for that. You've really told us the kind of background, which is so important, I think, to have it be transparent, that you didn't just quit medicine one day and then start this business the next day. That there was a period of time where you had your hand in employment, you were pregnant, trying to raise little kids, and you were also starting a business, and, all these things. So even though people might look online and be like, "Oh my gosh, she's the $7 million, or seven, figure, amazing entrepreneur. She's so successful." But how did she get there? You've kind of told us the reality of it, that it wasn't like an overnight thing that just happened in
And there were
one
a
day.
lot of failures along the way too. I have to
Yes,
add that. I mean, that's
I
so
love that.
important to acknowledge what you were saying about pivoting and you figure things out as an entrepreneur and you try something and it doesn't work. And you just have to be resourceful to keep going and looking for another way and know that you will fail. That is part of being an entrepreneur. You fail over and over and over again.
You do. And, I'm so grateful that you were so transparent about that, and honest, because about the origin of this, because I think a lot of people get so overwhelmed when they see people that are successful that they just think, I can't do that, or that's too hard, or I have to make this huge decision. Maybe you don't have to make a huge decision. You have to just make the next decision, which might be to take a course and learn a little bit about this, or to just maybe think, what would it be if I cut back to 80% this year, or 60, or what would that look like? so that I could pursue this other thing, So there's lots of different ways that you can live the life that you truly want to live without making radical decisions in one day, and not making a decision is making a decision, I always say. So just asking yourself those questions. You've just been such a great conversation. Tell people how they can find you, where they can learn more, and how they can follow you.
I want to add just one more little thing to that, which is one of my mentors says, ordinary things consistently done lead to extraordinary results. And so it's a decision that little decisions that you make every day that move you forward a little bit. And so, like you're saying, it's not one giant decision one day that changes everything. It's like you create that vision of where you want to go. And then little by little, you take those consistent, ordinary actions every single day. So, in 2015, I decided to invest in real estate with my husband and build a portfolio. And it was like those little decisions the first 3 years that ultimately got us to the place where we had enough cash flow. We said, okay, now we have a lot of options. But it wasn't like day one we got financially free. It took time, it took energy,
Right.
it took effort, it took focus,
Yes.
and it
And
took making.
it probably took you saying no to a lot of things so that you could focus on those things.
It took us living in a duplex, living upstairs, right? Like in a neighborhood that was not the nicest neighborhood. Like it took those kind of decisions to get us there in 3 years. And so it's not an overnight thing. It's a thing that it's a process that you just keep making the same decision over and over every single day of like, hey, I'm going to keep working towards my vision. And you take those tiny little steps. And that's what ultimately gets you there. There's no overnight successes, I don't think.
Mhm. No, I'm so glad you're saying that because I think that it drives me crazy when I go online and I see this, like, people are like, for 1 hour a week, you can make $1 million. And I'm like, if there's no job on the planet where you're going to work an hour a week and make $1 million, like maybe if you've worked for 10 years to build an investment portfolio that like allows you to do that someday, yes, you may be able to do that. But like, it just doesn't exist. And when you're starting out, you have to be so committed to it and you have to be willing to take risks and be bold and be brave and invest your own money in things. And, that's just part of being an entrepreneur. And I love that you're so real and honest about that because it's such an important message for people listening who feel stuck or feel like they're wearing the golden handcuffs and don't have a way out, that you can make these small moves and just get curious and learn. Take a course, sign up for one of your courses, sign up for a course somewhere, learn something about, get a coach to kind of investigate and get curious about what you want. All of these things are available to us. So tell us how they can find you.
So I teach at Semi-Retired MD how to invest in real estate, how to buy your own portfolio of rentals that create another source of income for you, and then also how to save on taxes like we did. I have Fast Fire Capital, which is kind of creating options for passive investors who want to invest in real estate or alternative investments. And then lastly, BR is my new company, and it's really about helping female entrepreneurs make more profit with more ease. And it's all about being bold, doing so in a really bold way. Because I don't know, that's the way I kind of love leading life is with boldness and just kind of taking those steps that feel risky and feel scary, but taking them and getting the pride that comes with knowing that you're becoming more of who you're capable of being. That's what I think entrepreneurship does for you. It really teaches you about yourself. It allows you to reach more of your potential and to impact a lot more people. And so that's why I really love it.
Well, thank you for coming on. This was so wonderful. And uh, again, everything that we talked about today, I think can be applied to so many different people, whether you're in medicine or not. And asking yourself that question that Dr. Alto gave us at the very beginning, that her husband asked her about what would her life look like if she lived without limitations? What a powerful question that we can all reflect on today, wherever we are, if we're driving in the car, or if we're coming home from a call shift, or if we're out on a run, or we're on the treadmill listening to this. We can ask ourselves these questions and just take the courage to really think about it and answer that, and maybe even share with a trusted colleague today. Thanks for listening, and thanks for joining, and thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you.